All right, everyone is silent, so we can start. Thank you so much for being here, all of you. I'm really happy to see so many faces. There are also more than 100 people online registered, so that's also really nice. People online, welcome as well. You can put your questions on the mail address I'll send you, and we certainly will address also your questions after the talk. But first, let me introduce Martijn Storms to you. Welcome. You are the curator of maps and atlases at our own library, University Library, with a wonderful collection of maps and atlases. He's not only curator, he's really bringing the wonderful collection to the audience, to everyone. He made a wonderful book published by Lano only a year ago, I think, but he will talk more about that himself later. And I also want to especially mention a wonderful exhibition that's still running, and that will be also central to Martijn's talk today. Maps, Navigating and Manipulating. It's still running till 29th of October at the National Museum of World Cultures, more or less around the corner here in Leiden, close to the railway station for the people online, so do go and visit. Martijn, thank you so much for being here. The floor is yours.
So, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here and to say something about this exhibition in Museum Volkenkunde, as we say in Dutch, or the National Museum of Ethnology, a museum actually with a lot of different names. I will it changes every time, and well, I come back to that a bit later. Why this exhibition? Well, the first idea to make an exhibition was because last year in 2022, it was exactly 150 years ago that Johannes Tiberius Bodal Nijenhuis died. Now, who was this Bodal Nijenhuis guy? He was probably the greatest private map collector that has ever lived worldwide. Here in Leiden, he lived at Rapenburg, actually the neighbor of this building, just 2 houses away, at number 69. And he was the last generation of Luchtmans Publishing House, but it was not a real businessman, so when he got the chance, he sold the publishing house to Brill. So that is the publishing house Brill that is still exists today. And from that time, he devoted his life basically full-time on his private collecting of maps and atlases, and also topographical prints and drawings, and he had a huge library and so on. He died in 1872, and in his will he had made sure that his collection was kept together after he died and was brought over to the University Library. So basically from 1872 onwards, Leiden University Libraries has an important map collection. That's basically the start and the core of this collection. Now, to commemorate that 150 years of map collection in the library, we wanted to make a book. So last year, Stijn already told that the book was published at Lano Publishers, titled Maps That Made History, 1000 Years of World History in 100 Old Maps. And basically it's an overview of the variety of the map collections in our library. With that book, which is published in Dutch and in English, we also wanted to make an exhibition. Well, a little bit more about the book. My name is on the cover, but we were in an editing team with 6 people, 3 historians here of the Faculty of Humanities, 2 colleagues of the library and myself, and 50 historians and scholars contributed with entries on specific maps. So, well, I was kind of main author and a project leader of this book process, but I didn't make it completely on my own. And last year also was Leiden 22 European City of Science. So the book and especially the exhibition was made part of that celebrating program. Well, I already said I would say something about the name of the museum. So there are 4 world culture museums in the Netherlands that since some years form one organization. It's the Museum of the Tropics in Amsterdam, Tropenmuseum, the National Museum of Ethnology, Volkenkunde, here in Leiden, Africa Museum in Bergendal near Nijmegen, and the World Museum in Rotterdam. And I saw just yesterday that all these institutions changed their social media profile names to World Museum Amsterdam, World Museum Leiden, World Museum Bergendal, and World Museum Rotterdam. So the new name of this, well, combination of 4 museums will be World Museum. So from next year onwards, we only say World Museum Leiden and not Museum for Ethnology anymore. Well, we wanted to make an exhibition with the book, but of course the museum has its own agenda and their exhibitions have to fit in their own profile and in their mission. And the mission of the museum is to contribute to better world citizenship by teaching people to think critically and ask questions. And well, more practically that meant that the exhibition had to fit into that theme. So basically more emphasis was laid on non-Western perspectives and also regions outside Europe. So the maps we selected were more or less the regions that are also present in the museum. The exhibition was compiled by some people of the museum, curator Erna Lilje, Lisbeth Ouwehand, who was the curator for photography there but doesn't work there anymore, and Annemarie Worley, together with myself. And it had its limitations also because of the length of the exhibition. It runs for a year. So that means that no very vulnerable maps could be displayed. So no manuscript maps were selected, no maps on vellum. And for some maps, because of delicate colors, we have to switch the maps or swap the maps after 6 months for another copy. And here the photo on the right is the beginning of the exhibition. So it starts with a wall with some globes and the explanation of what the exhibition is about. How is the exhibition set up? We have 3 main themes: forms of maps, what can be mapped, and the effects of maps. And the first theme, forms of maps, is more about how you say that? Sorry, I forgot what how the maps look like. And the second theme, what can be mapped, is more about the content of the maps. And the third theme is more, yeah, it says the effects of maps. And these 3 main themes are subdivided in some sub-themes. And, well, in the next slides you will see what we selected for these themes. But before I go into that, I will say something more about the design. The exhibition was designed by Wendy Rommers, who has her own design bureau. So here we see some plans of the corridors in the museum. I don't know if you know the Museum Volkenkunde, but there are some large rooms which are devoted to specific countries or regions or continents. And on the side of these rooms are small corridors or galleries, as they call it, and these are most of the time empty or available for temporary exhibitions. So we could use 2 of these corridors for this exhibition. And a nice thing about the design, which had its limitations because of money, for instance, but still, I think Wendy did a great job. And a nice thing, I don't know if you see the cursor, maybe not, but there is a dotted line that goes through the whole exhibition, over the floors, but also over the walls, like a kind of bended route, and also connects the two corridors together, because they're not exactly next to each other, but following that dotted line through the museum, you come to the second part of the exhibition. So that is a nice thing about the design. Let me see. So this is some impressions of the design of the first gallery. And in the first gallery, which is a longer gallery, the first two main themes of the exhibitions are there. So that is the forms of maps and what can be mapped. And some transparent curtains were also used to make some spaces for specific video animations that were included in the exhibition. This is the second corridor, so that's the third theme. So this part of the exhibition was specifically devoted to the effects of map. And this one is smaller than the first gallery. And here's some more impressions of that room from above and from the sides. So then we come to the first main theme of the exhibition, forms of maps. So the first sub-theme is a simplification. You could also say generalization or projection. So the main problem that mapmakers, cartographers have is to transform the spherical surface of the Earth to the flat surface of a map. So that always leads to distortion. So you can choose for equal area projections, that the sizes of the different countries are still comparable, but you can also choose for other things that the forms are more or less the same, but then other ways of distortions will take place. And actually the only projection or only world map which is accurate is a globe. And one of the items in the exhibition is this piece of paper with gores or globe segments from 1621, a Jansonius globe, a small globe, which still had to be cut out and pasted on a spherical, on a sphere. But this is the only thing what has survived of this globe. So no complete fabricated globe is there, only this piece of paper. So in a movie which we made, I created that globe by cutting out a copy of this one, not the original, of course, and pasted on a piece of on a spherical form. And someone else made a digital animation, and I think I can play this. Yeah, now it's going around, so you get an impression how this globe should look like when it's completed. So I wait before it's around. It will stop at some point, but let's go on. Here another impression of this first part of the exhibition, so simplification. And we selected some world maps in different projections. So I showed you the globe segments. There is a Japanese world map in two hemispheres, the two circles you see here, and some others. And also this application, which you see on the left, which is the Mercator projection, which is absolutely not equal area, but Gerard Mercator, Flemish cartographer in the 16th century, created this projection for navigation. So what he did was to make a projection where every compass direction is a straight line. So that's very useful for navigation, for shipping. Well, the effect is that it got distorted towards the poles. So the further north and the further south you come, the larger the regions are depicted. So it inflates the size of objects away from the equator. And a good example is Greenland, which is on this map. It's the big white spot in the north, which looks like it's almost as big as Africa. But in this application, you can select Greenland and drag it towards Africa. And you see this blue part, which is the actual size of Greenland. So you can compare in this projection the real size of different regions. So you see how large these distortion towards the poles are. On the right, very modern world map, Chinese world map from 2013. It's actually the last map in the book, which has 100 maps in chronological order. And you cannot really say what is north here because the two poles are both on this world map, so the North Pole and the South Pole. And above the North Pole, you can see North America upside down. And China and Asia more or less in the center of this map, which is also a thing that every country tends to place its own country in the center of a world map. There's also some political ideas behind this map. So China claims, because it represents 1/5 of the world population, that it also should have access to the sources of the North and the South Pole for a 1/5 part. And also for navigation, and because of climate change, especially the North Pole area will become more important for sea trade and sea routes. And this map shows that sea routes from China to Europe and North America are much shorter over the North Pole than via the Indian Ocean and the Suez Channel. This is another Chinese world map, or actually a Japanese copy of a Chinese world map from 1663. And it's both a map of China and a world map. So in the center, very large, China is depicted with all its provinces, and I think it's visible. You see the Great Wall in the north, but around China, the rest of the world is depicted too, but relatively much smaller than China itself. So it basically tells the story of China within the world, or with the countries that surround China. It's not all very clear, but you can see a kind of greenish island in the northeast. That should be Cuba. I cannot read Chinese myself, but people who can told me this. And in the upper left corner, you can see Europe, and I enlarged that part of the map, and I think you can recognize the British Isles, Scandinavia, and the Mediterranean. So it's quite distorted, but it is a world map because all the countries that surround China are on this map as well. The second sub-theme of this first main theme is navigation. This is a very long, 12-meter long map of the Tokaido Road, which is the main trading route between the imperial capital, Kyoto, and the shogunal capital, Edo, present-day Tokyo in Japan. So it's a kind of Leporello or concertina map, so you can fold it and then it becomes a very small booklet. But when you unfold it, it's 12 meters long. and it shows the whole route from Kyoto to Tokyo. We don't have a showcase that is 12-meter long, so what we did is every month show another part of this map. So the real map fans can come back to the museum every month and then see every time another part of this route map. Here's a detail of the eastern part with Edo and the shogunal castle in the upper right corner. And what you also see is these red squares, and these are compass roses. And that's because the route is not in reality a straight line, but the map is more or less a straight line. So at every section, the direction of the map changes. So the compass rose indicates where north is on that part of the map. So that's also a form of manipulation, what is the main theme of this exhibition. So here you see that this again on the left, cut up in 4 pieces, the complete Tokaido road map, and on the right, a modern map with the real route of that Tokaido road, which has 53 stations, so that were also resting points and where you can sleep and can eat. So the map also gives a lot of information for tourists and travelers what to expect in certain places along the route. So let me see. Next to the maps from the University Library, there are also modern works of art in the exhibition and this kind of video animations. I didn't dare to include a real animation because it not always works when you present live. So please check that online. It's on the National Museum of Australia. You can see the whole video of 7.5 minutes, or go to the museum, of course, where it's visible as well. And this is the story line, or a song line of the trekking of the 7 Sisters. And that showcases the 5 First Nations song lines from Australia's western and central deserts. So it's a kind of saga from the Aboriginal people, which has a link to the specific locations in Australia and follows that route and ends in the starry sky and the constellations. So that is really beautifully visualized in this animation. And on the left still, you can see the outline of Australia. A second theme, or a third theme, I must say, is aesthetic maps. So maps were not only made to be a functional tool for traveling or whatever, but also to be beautiful. And so a small section of the exhibition is more devoted to that, and we selected 2 wall maps. So maps also have this representational or decorational function. So maps to impress or to be kind of status symbols. So here's an example of a map that was swept after 6 months. So the first 6 months we have this map of Africa, which you see on the left, and now it's the map of Asia. But you can clearly see they belong together. And they are part of a set of 5 wall maps, which is the world map and the 4 continents. We only have these 2 in our collections. Published by a lesser-known Amsterdam publisher, Joachim Boormeester, in 2 sheets, and a separate sheet for the title on the top. And what is a nice practical thing of this map is that for this title stroke, the publisher used the same copper plates, but then here for Asia, pasted a small separate strip with the name Asia on top of the original title, so that he doesn't have to make a complete new title copper plate. And the problem with Asia is that it's a small word, so there is some space left. That's why it doesn't look really great, that title. Okay. And the other wall map is this special map of the Philippines. And what is special on this map is that it is published in the Philippines itself. So it's a kind of co-production of the Spanish colonists and Jesuits who were there together with local artists. It's basically the map of the Philippines, so the most important map in the history of Philippine cartography, you can say, and a map with an own Wikipedia page. And on that page it's stated that about 20 copies worldwide of this map still exist. The images on the left and right side of this map are drawn by local artists, so that is the local influence of this map. And that is also an aspect we wanted to stress, that maps are often made by Westerners, by colonizers from a Western perspective, but when you look closely you can see they really needed the local information to make these maps, and this is a clear example where the local people and the colonizers worked together to produce this map. Published in Manila in 1734. The second theme, what can be mapped, so that is about all the topics that you can put in a map, which not only have to be geographical information. So basically you can map everything. So a first sub-theme there is Worlds Imagined. So that is about non-real places. This is a very rare map of Atlantis, made by a French scholar who lived in Utrecht, or near Utrecht, Maximilien Henri de Saint-Simon. And he studied the work of Plato, who wrote about Atlantis and where it was and how big it was. And Plato had the idea that Atlantis should be as big as Europe, Africa, and Asia together. So that's the colored part of the map. So then the idea was, when Atlantis should be that big, it's almost covering the complete Atlantic Ocean. So it looks very, very strange, but that's a very nice map, actually. Another sub-theme, communicating knowledge. Yeah, that can be anything. This is about the interior of the Earth. The maps on the right are not in the exhibition, but are the sources for the map that you can see on the left. So the images on the right are from the book Mundus Subterraneus by Athanasius Kircher, a German scholar who went to volcanoes and studied lava and created theories about how the interior of the world looked like. And the Dutch natural historian Theodorus Schoon actually made a combination of all these prints in the work of Kircher to a kind of overview map of a cross-section of the world and how that interior looked like. Not only volcanoes, but also mining you can see. And here are some details. So on the left, the interior of the world with some underground rivers and seas of fire. That were the theories at the end of the 17th century. But also about the atmosphere and weather phenomena here above the sea with kind of whirlpools and things like that. And some images of mining activities with miners who do some mining work. And what is special about this map, another aspect, is that it was published by a woman, and that is quite rare in the 17th century. We know of many women in the history of cartography in the early modern period, but these were almost always widows of male Mapmakers or mail publishers who continued the company when their man died. But in this case it's different because the husband of Elisabeth van Lin, or Elisabeth de Jong, which is her own name, she only started a print business after her man died. So she thought, well, finally I can do what I really want. So it's, I think, a real 17th century power woman. A third sub-theme here is mapping the body and brain. This is a special modern work of art, but also a map of the Chinese artist Zhu Ziji. I hope I pronounce it correctly. And it is a set of utopian political ideas put together. You can see Marxism, but also capitalism and also things like that. Concepts which also have a kind of utopian idea behind it. It's also geofiction because it is a map of a place which is not, can be found on Earth, not related to the geographic reality. And when you look closely, it also looks like a kind of a human body. I don't know for sure if that was the idea of the artist, but on the right you see 2 legs and feet, I think. I don't think the circular thing in the, on the right, upper right corner is a football, but who will know? And a kind of loose hat on the left, but well, maybe it's more coincidental, I don't know. And in this same theme, another modern work of art is this by Zipporah Johnston, the map of the autistic brain. So basically a map of the artist herself. It's also called the Zipporah Campus, and this is really funny. You should read the legend, the key of this map, which has very funny things. I can read it on my screen, so I just look here. For instance, let me see, number 3 in the center, the fountain of useless trivia, or number 16 in the right, lower right corner, the oubliette, where pins, names, and important tasks go to die now, and more things like that. Also a cat radar, so really funny to watch closely. It looks actually in the museum, it's printed on the wall like a plan of the museum itself, but it's not. Infographics is another theme. And actually this map can be seen as a vertical timeline from Noah, the biblical story of Noah and his sons, who were the basis of the people of the world, up to the nations in the early 18th century below. It's depicted as a river delta, and it's the oldest so-called stream of times map. In the literature, it's always said that the one by Friedrich Strass, German, who made a similar map 100 years later, was the oldest, and this map looks like it's forgotten, so it was kind of a find for myself when I realized this, and really wanted to put this map in the book as well as in the exhibition. And when you look closely, all these river streams come together in the top at Noah, or start there, and then they divide. But on the right side there is one separate stream that doesn't come from Noah, and that when you follow it downwards you see it's the Chinese people. So they probably have no biblical origin. And on the right detail, on the most right, you see a small stream, and that is America, where an Inca and Aztec leader are named, and a small lake which says 1492 America Detecta. Then we come to the third theme. I have no idea how long I have spoken, so I just go on. The effects of map. So let's say, I love maps from a very young age because I think they are beautiful. I can look hours to it. But the more I study it, I realize that the stories behind these maps are not that beautiful as the maps themselves. So this theme is about these sometimes negative effects of the maps. So a lot of maps has to do with territorial claims. Here's another impression of this second gallery in the museum. And we selected some maps with on this theme of territorial claims. This comes from the Africa Museum. It's a kind of slide map with on the left in colors the colonial borders of 1914, and on the right the different population groups or tribes in Africa. And on top of it you can put a transparent layer with the colonial borders and the present day borders and switch that to compare. And you can see that there is actually no relation between these borders and the population groups. So that explains a lot of the problems that still occur today in Africa. And the basis for this problem, of course, is the 1884-1885 Berlin Conference, where the European powers divided Africa amongst each other. And next to it we have Bos Atlas, the famous Dutch school atlas of just a few years later, and then you see that the colonial borders start to emerge on the map. So it's still not completed. So it took to the early 20th century when the whole continent was subdivided, but here the first straight lines, often these borders, emerge on the map, and in the legend you see indicated in colors what European country was colonizing what part of Africa. A more modern example of territorial claims is the South China Sea. That is the famous 9-dash line, so it's called, so the dashed border which is claimed by China, and we are not promoting this Chinese ID in the exhibition, but show actually the craziness of these claims, because China claims the complete South China Sea. So, oh, there's it, there's again. So there's no part of the sea left for the other countries that surround the South China Sea, like Vietnam, the Philippines, and Malaysia. And next to this map, we have an animation of a series of satellites, images of a small island, or more a rock in that South China Sea, on which China built a naval base. So you see within 10 years that from an empty island, a complete naval base was constructed there. Yeah. And the last example of territorial claims is this map of Argentina. So, which is also a bit strange, because it's not only mainland Argentina, but also the claim of Argentina of the section of the South Pole. And on the right, you see a map of all the claims of on the South Pole. And especially in that part where Argentina has its claims, there are overlapping claims. There is a Chilean claim and a British claim. So basically you need two Antarcticas to satisfy all these claiming countries. But it stays with claims because in the United Nations it is still decided that no country can claim the South Pole. One of my favorite themes are propaganda maps. So we have a section on that theme as well. So it's always important in general to understand that maps are not really neutral images, but you always have to think who made this map and what is the story they want to tell with it, especially, of course, with propaganda maps. This is the oldest one, which is also served as the image for the cover of the book from 1598. So that's when we're talking about the Dutch Revolt, an anti-Spanish propaganda map. And there were earlier anthropomorphic maps of Europe, where Europe was depicted as a queen or a virgin, and that these maps actually were pro-Spanish or pro-Habsburg, telling the story that Europe, a united Europe under Habsburg rule, can bring peace on the continent. But here it's turned around by the Dutch protesters, and here the Spanish queen is depicted as an aggressor with a raised sword, so anti-Spanish propaganda. This is actually the earliest cartoon map, what we call cartoon maps of Europe, where individual countries are depicted as anthropomorphic or zoomorphic images. It dates from 1854, that's the time of the Crimean War. And that was actually the first war that was reported daily basis in Western newspapers because of telegraph lines, which were then for the first time available. The news could be spread quickly far away from the front. And also photography was there, so photos were put in these newspapers so people could really see the negative sides and the destruction that a war brings. And that led to a commentary in the newspaper in textual form, but also in this form of kind of satirical cartoon maps. So the countries are depicted as animals, basically. We see Britain as a lion, France as an eagle, Turkey as a turkey, and the Russian bear. Yeah, that's kind of a joke in this map. And when we zoom in on the Black Sea and the Crimean Peninsula, we see the French-British fleet around Crimea, clipping the nails of the paw of the Russian bear. And soon after this map was published, the British and French go on land and took over Crimea. And this genre of cartoon maps became very popular later on, for instance, the French-German War in 1870, also in the First World War. This is a map of 1900 on the left, and here Russia is depicted as an octopus, which is also a kind of recurring theme in these cartoon maps. So an aggressor is often depicted as an octopus with tentacles. That is the same for the map on the right, which is a German propaganda map from the First World War, which depicts Britain as an octopus. And the title, Vrijheid der Meren, or Freedom of the Seas, refers to the speech by Woodrow Wilson, the American president who came with a plan of 14 points for peace, or to end the First World War. And one of these points was freedom of the seas, but actually France and Britain were against that principle. So here the Germans tried to drive a wedge to drive the Allies apart. And a last example of propaganda is this missionary map, really meant to recruit missionaries. So the map itself has hierarchical colors indicating the religions. So blue is Protestant, red are Catholics, gray the Orthodox Church, yellow is the Islam, and black are the heathens. So that's the regions where work has to be done for the missionary. And what's maybe more interesting are the images that surround the map. So it's basically pairs of images which show the situation before Christianization and after. For instance, in the upper right corner, you can see infant burying in China, where children were buried alive. I don't know if that was true. And then below that, someone preaching to the Chinese, and everything was at peace. This was another example of a map that was swept after 6 months because of the delicate colors. So we also have a Dutch copy of this map that was published some years later, but also was adjusted to the Dutch audience. So the North American scenes of the Inuit people were changed for some scenes in Indonesia, the Netherlands, East Indies. Oh, it was not the last example of propaganda, sorry. This is the most modern propaganda map in the exhibition, and this is North Korean propaganda, published in English, so really meant for the foreign public. Also published by the Foreign Languages Publishing House in Pyongyang. And what it does is that it emphasizes and basically exaggerates the role of Kim Il-sung, the later party leader in North Korea, in the struggle against the Japanese occupation. So Korea was occupied by Japan until the end of the Second World War. And this map claims that basically it was only thanks to Kim Il-sung that the Japanese were defeated. Other theme in this effects of map is exploitation. So we have some plantation maps from Indonesia, so tobacco plantations on Sumatra on the left, and a map of the Banda Islands on the right, where nutmeg was one of the few islands where nutmeg was produced. And when you look at cartouche in the upper corner, it's maybe not really visible here, but there are some putti which hold nutmeg branches in their hand. And of course, also in the Americas, there are the famous plantation maps here of Suriname. It's a map of 1758, and the coincidence was that three main map collections in the Netherlands, that is the National Archives, Allard Pierson, which is the special collection of the University of Amsterdam, and Leiden University, had a map exhibition at the same time. And this was this map was in all three exhibitions, so that was kind of a coincidence, I think. Where was I? And on the right is part of a map of West Africa, where the names of the countries are named after the products that the colonizers got there. So we see from left to right, it's in Dutch, so Tandkust, Tooth Coast, Teeth Coast, Gold Coast, and Slave Coast. And when we zoom in on the map of Suriname, we see outside the area where the plantations are, so in the forest, some villages that are the maroon villages, so the runaway slaves who settled themselves in the forests. But here these villages are burned down, so it's the message of the colonizers that they had these oppression of the Maroons under control, which was not really the case in reality. And on the other side, you also see some villages of free Indians, so the Native American people. So then I'm reaching the end of the exhibition. The last piece is this work of art by Faisal Saro, an artist from Groningen, someone from Suriname descent. And he made this map of his own body. It's called Yeye, And well, the artist has a chronic disease, so all his personal experiences and experience with his body are visualized in this map. So some parts are left vague because, yeah, that has to do with what he feels with these parts. There's also, it's a kind of an installation, so you can see a kind of body which is moving, which has to do with the Winti religion, which is related to. And what he also did is put names of his ancestors in his map. So you can see kind of dotted line with the names of his forefathers and foremothers, based on what is known of genealogical research, what his family did. And that he put on fragments of nautical charts of Suriname, of the places where he know his ancestors lived. So that's the cartographical connection with this piece. There's an explanatory video with this piece where he explains himself exactly what this piece of art is about, which he can do much better than I. And also we made a series of videos for social media, and you can see it on YouTube. So every month we made a short video and sometimes a bit longer video to keep attention for the exhibition throughout the year. So there are still 4 weeks to go. So if you haven't seen the exhibition yet, I would invite you to go to the Museum Volkenkunde here in Leiden. And I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much for this talk. All of a sudden we learned that maps and art history is rather closely related, but also politics, of course, just as what we want to do as art historians, not only looking at the aesthetics, but also at the politics, at propaganda and things like that. So in that way, I do think that what art history really wants to do these days is closely familiar to what you are doing with maps. In that way, we do have common grounds. And on this notice, when I said common grounds, I got light on green. So those are for questions for you in the room. Who has a question? Let me start while you're thinking about a question for one of the questions online. Actually, the question was if every of those maps you showed came from the Leiden collections, or of course you made clear that the contemporary story from Australia was not, but are the rest of the Leiden collection? And the other question that was asked was, which map do you really want to have in the Leiden collections, which is not in the Leiden collection yet?
Oh, that last one is a very tricky question. I have a whole wish list of maps we don't have. But to start with the first one, so the most maps in the exhibition are from Leiden University Libraries. But some of the things I showed are the input of the museum. So for instance, the map of Utopia was an ID from the curator of the museum, but was a loan from the Van Abbe Museum in Eindhoven. And also the last thing I showed by Faisal Saro was an ID from the people of the museum. So there are more things, and I haven't shown all the pieces of the exhibition in my presentation. So maybe 1/4, 1/5 of the pieces in the exhibition are not maps from the library, something like that. A wish list, yeah, tricky question. What map do I want? There is a very special map which shows the, what is the English word, specerijen? Spices, of course. The spices on a map of the East Indies. That is one of the maps we don't have. And for instance, what Amsterdam University Library has. But maybe it's nice, I can say our latest edition was a big map, manuscript map of Suriname from 1830, 2.5 meters long. Wow. And I reached even the national television news with that. So that was, everybody will knows about it now.
Questions from the people? All right, I give you the mic so that also online they can hear you. So just take it close to your mouth and then everyone will understand.
My question concerns the contemporary art, and I was really interested to know what the communication was with the artists and between the museum and the artists, and also perhaps if you know what the artists thought of being exhibited in an anthropological museum rather than an art museum, and that whole discussion as well, if you have comments on that.
Okay. Yeah, that differs a bit from artist to artist. So for instance, Faisal Saro, we had quite intensive contacts with. His installation was previously exhibited in Groningen, so we came in contact with him, and he was really involved in the setup of the exhibition, and the special video was made with him. But for other artists, it is simply a loan of one piece from a museum. For instance, the map of Utopia. I don't think we had any contact with the original artist. So that differs a bit from piece to piece. And I think they liked it that they were exhibited in a non-art museum, because it's all artists who work in one way or another with maps or with the idea of mapping. So they really liked it to be in a kind of map exhibition.
I have two questions. First of all, are all the maps of the exhibition also in the book? And the second one is, does the university collection still have budget to buy the things you still really need, or are you just depending on gifts of people dead or alive?
Okay, that are two very different questions. So are all the maps in the book? Not all of them. So, well, our first idea was to make an exhibition with the book, just all the maps in the book, put that in an exhibition, easy. But of course the museum had other ideas, and I think that was for the exhibition really an improvement. So it's more clearer story we tell and a more specific story we tell in this exhibition. So most of the maps from the library are also in the book. There are a few exceptions, and the modern works of art are not in the book. But I hope I have contact now, for instance, with Faisal Saro. Maybe we have the opportunity that he can create a new piece of art based on one of our maps and add that to the collection. So that's a nice bridge to your second question. We have a budget for acquisition for special collections, which is limited. So there are also funding systems we can use every now and then. We have friends of the university library, so we can use that. They also contributed to the acquisition of the Suriname map, which was also an unusual map that went beyond the normal budgets. And for that map we also organized a special evening for people who could contribute to make this acquisition possible. So there are various ways to try to get enough funding to add something special to the collection every now and then.
All right. Thank you very much for being here, all of you. Thank you so much for this talk. I really liked it. And next time, I hope to see you all again. Bye-bye.